Hello and welcome to the State of Shakespeare. I'm Garrett Vandermeer.
And I'm Jim Elliott.
And our guest today is Kevin Rich. Hello, Kevin.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going great. It's great to have you back.
Yeah.
It's great to be back. I had a great time last time.
Oh, thanks. So did we. It was 2017 when we last checked in with you, and you were in your final season at Illinois Shakes and about to begin your tenure at Colorado Shakes in Boulder, Colorado.
That's right. I'm on the faculty here at UC Boulder, or CU Boulder, and I work with the Colorado Shakespeare Festival, although it's not like last time where it's like a joint position. But I have had the good fortune of working as an actor and a director for the festival, which is in our backyard, several times since then.
And you are also the director of the Applied Shakespeare Certificate Program, which we'll find out more about later.
Yeah.
And as we speak, you're currently appearing in the contemporary play, The Book of Will, as Henry Condell. Am I saying that right? Is it Condell or Condell? Do we know?
It is Condell, and I had the same question. It's Condell.
I'm glad to hear a good
I always thought it was Condell.
I mean, our team has decided on Condell, but I too came in thinking maybe Condell. So
you're appearing as Henry Condell in the contemporary play from, I think, 2018, The Book of Will by Lauren Gunderson,
yes,
which is in production now through August 6th in the historic Mary Rippon Outdoor Theater. Am I saying that right? Is it Rippon?
Yeah.
Oh, geez, all these names.
Well, I've heard both actually. The Rippon and the Rippon.
Let's go with the historic outdoor theater in the foothills there in Boulder, Colorado. And this play, The Book of Will by Lauren Gunderson, tells the heartfelt and hilarious true story of the artists and friends who undertook the Herculean effort to publish Shakespeare's plays in the wake of his death. What an interesting premise.
Yeah.
Oh, it's awesome. It is Shakespearean fan fiction at its finest.
It's exactly the sort of thing that Jim and I love to geek out about. Can't wait to hear about it. Now, this play is about the birth of the first folio of Shakespeare, we assume, right?
Yes. Yep. It's how that came to be.
Now, we recently talked with Michael Whitmore from the Folio Shakespeare Library in Washington, D.C., which houses, among other things, a collection of original first folio editions. And I just realized that the first folio will be 400 years old next year in 2023.
Yeah.
Well, for those of us who need a refresher, what is the first folio?
So, well, and I'll speak kind of from, because Lauren Gunderson clearly did her homework. And there's so much great research in the play. The first folio was primarily the efforts of two actors, Henry Condell and John Hemmings, who, after the death of William Shakespeare, decided to gather up all the plays and publish them. It is a collection of 36 of Shakespeare's plays. 18 of them had not been published before in court, as a quarto or in any way. And so we can credit this first folio with 18 of the plays that would have been lost to time otherwise. And then the other 18 were sort of existing in various iterations. And the play kind of takes a deep dive into that. It opens with an actor saying the to be or not to be speech from the first quarto of Hamlet, to be or not to be, there's the point. Mm-hmm. And the three Kingsmen who are still alive. The play starts 3 years after the death of William Shakespeare, and Henry Condell, John Hemmings, and Richard Burbage are sitting in a tavern, and they're just complaining about the show they just saw, and how so many of Shakespeare's plays are getting pirated. Henry explains that boys are coming to their theater, listening to their performances, and writing as fast as they can, jotting down scripts imperfectly, and then those are getting published, and they're just expressing concern that the real plays by William Shakespeare are not going to outlive them. And then I don't want to give away too many spoilers, but very early in the play, Richard Burbage passes away, and Henry and John think he knew so many of Shakespeare's plays, and that memory is gone, and they realize that if they don't do something about it, all of these amazing plays are going to die with them. And so they go through the very difficult task of rounding up all of the plays. The first person they go to is the stage manager of the theater and ask for all the scripts, and they were lost in the fire when the theater burned down because of a cannon malfunction. And so then it's this journey of trying to track down sides and wrangle with the publishers of quartos, and it's really quite an adventure story. It's great fun.
Yeah, I was going to say it sounds a little bit like an Elizabethan adventure story. I'm thinking about National Treasure, the Nicolas Cage movie, where he's hunting after various artifacts to create something. And that sounds really exciting. But I do have a question about that beginning scene where they're saying that boys were coming to the theater and scribbling down and then using it as a script. Is that true? Were they doing that?
To my knowledge, that's our best guess about how those quartos. I mean, I think that there are different opinions about the various quartos. You know, that one in particular, the first quarto of Hamlet, is often called the bad quarto. But I've also had conversations with some defenders of it who actually say, well, it's lean and mean. It's 2 hours long. It actually plays better than it reads. So who knows? But I think the thought is that there were no sort of copyright rules at the time, and various versions were being published, particularly by someone named William Jaggard, who is actually a character in the play. And if you look at the first folio, I don't know if you have a copy of a facsimile or, but there's a variety of really interesting things before, like at the very beginning of the book, including a dedication to two earls, a foreword by Ben Jonson, and it's attributed to be published by Isaac Jaggard, William's son. And I think that Lauren Gunderson took those dots and connected them. I don't know how many of them are absolutely fact-based and how many are her terrific theatrical imagination connecting the dots. But Isaac and William Jaggard are both characters in the play. Ben Jonson is a character in the play. And there's also an account of why those two random earls came to be included in the dedication. So I think it's equal parts historical fact and theatrical imagination. But I think Lauren does a really great job of imagining the struggles. And I know our artistic director, Tim Orr, on the first day of rehearsal, talked about why they chose that play for this particular moment. It's a love letter to theater. It's a love letter to Shakespeare. And they were reading plays in the middle of the pandemic, thinking about 2023 potentially being like an opportunity for us to be at full capacity again. And it just seemed perfectly timed about how, this play about how theater will rise above all the challenges and survive at any way possible. It really is a beautiful story about resilience and in the face of challenges.
So who was Henry Condell, the character that you're playing? I don't know anything about him.
Yeah. So, Henry, and again, I'm taking a lot of this from Lauren's play, but Henry and John were probably the two last members of the King's Men. They were actors in the company. They performed in many, they originated many roles. John Hemmings actually, though, left he started as an actor, but then became the theater manager. And that actually is talked about a lot in the play. Henry is kind of the idealistic actor who wants to make this happen at all costs and is just really caught up in the romance of it all. And John is the one who's dealing with the realities of what it means to publish these plays and the cost of it and the concern that who's going to buy this huge tome the size of a log that's going to cost someone a year's wages. He's worrying about all of the details because he's having to deal with it as the manager. He becomes the manager of the King's Men after Richard Burbage dies.
So educate me about this. There was never a full play. The parts were disseminated to the actors who were playing the roles. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. And it's actually mentioned because when in the fourth scene, when they learned that all the full scripts, all of Shakespeare's original drafts had been lost in the fire, that's what they said. Well, maybe we can find all the sides and piece them together. And Henry has a line. Why the hell do we start doing it that way anyway? Every actor gets only his own lines. And the response is because Shakespeare was trying to prevent rival companies from stealing the scripts. It would be harder for rival companies to get their hands on the plays. And Henry then laments, well, now we can't steal our own plays from ourselves for ourselves. So it adds to the challenge. And it's funny that you say that because one of the shows, so Book of Will is one of the 5 plays that are being produced by the Colorado Shakespeare Festival this summer. And it's it's really fun because the three Shakespeares that are getting done, Two Gentlemen of Verona, Coriolanus, and All's Well That Ends Well, all three of those would not exist without the first folio. And then the fifth play we're doing every year, the Colorado Shakespeare Festival for the past 7 or 8 years has produced a kind of experiment, the original practices production. We affectionately call it the OP, and it's basically an investigation of Shakespeare's original staging practices and rehearsal practices. So every year, a company of actors gets only their own lines. They get sides with just 3 words prompting, and they're expected to show up on the first day as off book as possible because we only get, I think, 20 or 24 hours total rehearsal time. We rehearse the whole play in a week, and we have an onstage musician. We have an onstage line prompter, just like they may have had in Shakespeare's day. So if we don't know all of our lines, and with only 20 hours of rehearsal, we don't know all of our lines, we can call for line, and the audience loves it. I mean, it's so fun. It sells out every year because it's a one-off performance. And it's been a way to do plays that don't get done too much. In the recent past, we've done Edward II. We've done all the Henry VIs, King John. Last year, we did Pericles. This year, in the spirit of the season, we're doing Ben Jonson's The Alchemist. Oh. So for the first time, we're doing a non-Shakespeare play, and it's a good year to do it because Ben Jonson is a character in the Book of Will. And it's been just really fun to sort of make connections between those two things. I actually just came out of a production meeting for The Alchemist because I'm the actor manager for the production, and we're going to go into rehearsal in about a week or so. And we can talk about that too, because The Alchemist is Jonson is like the photo negative of Shakespeare in so many ways. It's been fun to work on.
What a tremendous accomplishment, given that they're just these sides. I also know that with OP, the original practice, Shakespeare and the roles, you discover some pretty amazing moments.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I'm sure you've noticed that a lot of Shakespeare's plays are very repetitive, where a line will get repeated 3 times. And if that's an actor's cue, then that's Shakespeare asking the other actor to sort of try to interrupt the other person. You know, there's all kinds of, when you investigate the plays through those practices, I agree with you. You make all kinds of discoveries. One of my favorite stories, which play was it? Maybe it was Edward III, because all the actors show up on the first day, only knowing their lines and the 3 words that cue them. So they're discovering, and we block the first half of the play on day 1 and the second half of the play on day 2. We just dive right in, right? And so people are learning the story as they go. And I remember the actor playing Queen Philippa did not know she was pregnant. She didn't know she was carrying a child because she had no language about it. Right. And when somebody else talked about how she's with child, the actor was like, wow. So it's just discovery after discovery. It's built in, it's a great listening exercise for actors because you actually don't know what's being said to you until the moment that it is being said.
Yeah, that's just so exciting.
It's great fun. And it's been fun to work on Book of Will alongside it because they're talking about these practices and they're talking about the sides. And Ben Jonson is distinguishing himself from Shakespeare about how he, because The Alchemist is such a different play. Shakespeare, I like to say if it's Shakespeare's warm country heart versus Jonson's cold city brain. If Shakespeare took the side of every character in his plays, Jonson takes no one's side. It's pure satire. It's set in contemporary London, in the neighborhood in which the Blackfriars, in which the performance is happening. It's just so different from Shakespeare in so many ways, and that's talked about in Book of Will.
But is Lauren Gunderson's work, she's done a lot of work where she takes Shakespeare and she spins it on its head. Plays like Exit Pursued by a Bear,
yes,
and The Taming. Is that an example of applied Shakespeare, or is that just a different category altogether?
I mean, I would say it is. Here we've been using applied Shakespeare as kind of an umbrella term for a lot of things. How Shakespeare might be applied in various ways. And so as part of the program, I teach a Shakespeare and community course where we're surveying really exciting applications of Shakespeare outside of the traditional commercial theater, like Shakespeare in prisons, Shakespeare with veterans. There's a Shakespeare and autism program at The Ohio State University. Really interesting sort of ways of intersecting Shakespeare with specific populations or looking at it through a specific lens. But I also think that new plays that are in conversation with Shakespeare's plays, that's applying Shakespeare to new work. And I would go a step further and say that that's what Shakespeare was doing. I mean, Shakespeare was primarily an adapter. So I would argue that it's Shakespearean to be producing new adaptations of Shakespeare's plays alongside Shakespeare's plays. If Shakespeare's company only performed their classics rather than writing new versions of them, we wouldn't have Shakespeare's plays. So I do think about nurturing new work that can be described as Shakespearean as an example of applied Shakespeare.
Yeah, and there's a spate of them that's happening. I mean, Lauren Gunderson has a ton.
Yes.
It's almost like she's working her way through the canon.
Yes, which is exciting to me.
Yeah, that's total. Like, I can't wait for the next one. What's she going to do?
Right.
But then there's Fat Ham, which is happening right now, which is the Hamlet story to Southern barbecue. I mean, like, fantastic.
I know.
And I'm all.
And I mean, to me, and sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, I remember last time we were talking about, because there's also in recent years been a couple of initiatives that have really fostered these plays. Shakespeare's New Contemporaries was an initiative at the American Shakespeare Center where it was a contest where they were putting out, I think, 4 titles a year, asking for playwrights to write companion pieces. And then they were choosing one and producing it. And I think that's resulted in some really terrific plays. I hope they publish an anthology or something.
Yeah.
I'm just remembering the titles. I know the companion piece to Merry Wives of Windsor was Anne Page Hates Fun, which I love.
I'm going to see a play at American Shakespeare Center tomorrow.
You are?
Taunton, Virginia. Yeah, I'm excited. I haven't been there before, but they were kind enough to get to throw some press tickets my way, and I'm going to see Thrive, or What You Will, which is a world premiere play, which was the winner of the 2020 Shakespeare's New Contemporaries project, which I guess must have been suspended for the pandemic, but here it's back.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, and that place is the mothership of original practices. It is so cool. It's I think one of my absolute favorite theaters that I've ever worked in. It's beautiful space.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, but I mean, again, it's a chance to give modern playwrights a chance to sort of take a deep dive into Shakespeare's plays and practices, and then produce something new, which is what Shakespeare was doing. So
it's exciting. So this is exciting, and Lauren Gunderson certainly. My playwright friend said she is the most produced playwright around the United States, in all the United States, that hasn't had a full play produced in New York City.
I did not know that she hasn't been produced in New York. That's really something.
I think she had a small play or small run, but nothing of great note, and I think it's exciting.
Yeah.
That she's gaining traction. The Book of Will made a big splash when it first came out. We've talked about Condell and Hemmings. We talked about Ben Jonson. Are there any women in the play?
I'm really glad you asked that, because I think in many ways Lauren Gunderson centers them. So we meet John Hemmings' wife, Rebecca, and his daughter, Alice, Henry's wife, Elizabeth, and is it revealing too much? No, well, even Shakespeare's wife, Anne, makes an appearance, and his daughter, Susanna. And these are all historical figures. I don't know how much we actually know about them, but Lauren Gunderson centers them in many ways in the play. It is a fact that I think it actually took like 6 years for the Folio to be realized. Like, it was a significant amount of time for them to actually get everything together and get this. As you said earlier in our conversation, it was a huge undertaking. And that is kind of compressed in the play, but it is true that during the process, John lost his wife, Rebecca. And I don't know that we know a ton of details about that, but Lauren really imagines, the personal impact that might have had, and this play is very much about relationships and loss and overcoming obstacles, as I said. And so that's a big part of it. Rebecca and Alice join Henry in really pushing John to go through with it. In the play, John becomes a kind of antagonist in that, and I think I mentioned this already, he's just saying, this isn't realistic. How are we going to get all of these plays? How are we going to do this? I'm trying to run a theater and this is costly and I don't even know who will buy this book. And of course, Henry is just, talking about it in the sense that we owe this to Will and Will's memory. But Rebecca has this amazing scene where she's really pushing John to do it. And she says, because these aren't Will's plays, these aren't your plays, these are ours as an audience member, these are our plays and we need them and we can't lose these to time. It's really beautiful hearing the perspectives of the women in this world as well. And like I said, they factor into the story just as much as the other characters that we've talked about.
I mean, I love that because I think that's the way I think about Shakespeare to this day, which is they're everybody's.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is in large thanks to the publication of this book.
Oh, yeah.
Really, truly one of the most influential books in history. And at the end of the play, the two men decide to bring the book to Anne Shakespeare. Oh, I forgot another one. So the Dark Lady is in the play as well. Yes, the Dark Lady of the Sonnets, who, and again, there's different thoughts about who that is. And Henry goes to visit the Dark Lady and asks for money to finish publishing. And so we get a really interesting scene there where we learn a little bit about that romantic affair between Shakespeare and the Dark Lady. But anyway, at the end of the play, Henry and John travel to Stratford because they want Anne to be the first to see the book. And that's a really lovely scene. And then there's this really interesting, Lauren gives in the script, there are multiple endings. You can choose how you want to end it. She provides the option of just ending where they close, where Anne Shakespeare says, well, can you read these stories to me? You're actors, right? And these plays are meant to be heard. And they open the book and that's the end of the play. But there's also the option for there to be some sort of amazing finale where we hear a cacophony of voices through time speaking Shakespeare. Maybe it's a collage or a montage. Maybe it's in multiple languages, just to really sort of drive home that these plays from this book just live on through the centuries. And CSF happens to be celebrating its 65th anniversary. And so they've created an ending that involves projections and photos of productions through the years. Val Kilmer played Hamlet here one year. And so there's a shot of Val Kilmer, a young Val Kilmer with a skull. And yeah, so it's this really neat sort of journey through the history of Colorado Shakes. And then all the actors in the ensemble have some text from the plays.
Yeah, I see an excerpt about Henry talking to John.
So it's a really powerful moment at the top of the second act. John has just lost his wife and they're both sitting in the theater alone. And John is actually a little bitter about it all. And he's saying, what's the point of telling these stories? Like what, it's feeling a little pointless to him in his grief. And he says, stories of forged life, life's a tempest of loss. Why do we bother with any of it? And Henry, ever the optimist, the idealistic actor that he is, says to feel again. And John says, I feel enough. And Henry has this really beautiful, this is where I say it's such a love letter. He says, I said to feel again. That's the miracle of it. The fairies aren't real, but the feeling is. And it comes to us here. Player and groundling alike, again and again here. Your favorite story just ended? Come back tomorrow. We'll play it again. You don't like the story you're in? A different one starts in an hour. Come here. Come again. Feel here. Feel again. History walks here. Love is lived here. Loss is met and wept for and understood and survived here. And not just the first time, but every time. We play love's first look and life's last here every day. And you will see yourself in it or your fear or your future before the play's end. And you will test your heart against trouble and joy. And every time you'll feel a flicker or a fountain of feeling that reminds you that, yes, you are yet living. And that is more than God gives you in his ample silence. And then it ends, and we players stand up and we look at the gathered crowd and we bow because the story was told well enough and it's time for another. And it is amazing to perform that in this beautiful outdoor theater, having an actual balcony to look at, when I'm talking about the love scenes. And it's a love letter.
That's just a beautiful, beautiful passage.
Yeah.
And to our listeners who happen to be in the Colorado or Denver area or within reach of Boulder, Colorado, they'll have a chance to see this play, The Book of Will, and others in this beautifully curated season that you have for your 65th year?
Yes. I think it's the second oldest Shakespeare festival in the country.
And this play is running through August 8th?
Yes.
Kevin Rich, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, guys. A pleasure.
Thanks, Kevin.
It's been great having you back.
It's been great being back. This is so fun.
Well, I'm Garrett Vandermeer.
And I'm Jim Elliott.
And thank you for listening to The State of Shakespeare.
Thanks for joining us for the State of Shakespeare podcast. We invite you to visit stateofshakespeare.com for more episodes, information about each of our guests, and the Shakespeare text you heard on the program, and much more. And we welcome you to join the discussion by liking us on Facebook. That's www.stateofshakespeare.com. Thanks for listening.